All right. I've been doing research about eel for uh, 35 years, not continuously, but from now and then. I start with a brief summary of the life cycle of the European eel. It is well known for most of you, I guess, but I think it's good to have a short repetition of its biology. It spawns in the Sargasso Sea, and the egg and larvae drift over the Atlantic Ocean to Europe and North Africa, and has a very widespread distribution. When it enters the continental shelves, it turns into glass eels, and the eels are recruited into the North Sea, the Baltic, the Mediterranean, etc. And then that part that we know, our best knowledge is about part, the growth part, the yellow eel, when it is entering inland waters, but also it may stay in coastal water as well, as it does in Scandinavian waters, for instance, on the Swedish west coast or in the Baltic Sea. Eventually, the yellow eels turn into silver eels, and migrate back to the Sargasso Sea and spawns and die in the ocean. And all stages from glass eels to silver eels are fished. And we have a lot of indices on recruitment, the number of eels coming to to European waters, but we lack good indices on eel escapement, the amount of silver eels returning to the Sargasso Sea. So this talk will be based on a study that I published last year. First, about the first alarm regarding development of a European eel. It was actually published by a Swedish scientist, Gunnar Svärdson, in 1976, 50 years ago. And he noted that fewer eels were ascending up rivers, and also poorer catches of silver eels, especially migrating from the Baltic Sea through the south, the Danish Straits. And I did a follow-up study 20 years later in 1996 about observation of eels entering rivers, Swedish rivers, and also catch per unit effort of silver eels in the Öresund. And the negative development continued. Today, it's well established that the recruitment of European eel has become very low, and it is based on various recruitment indices. And in the North Sea area to which we belong, the reduction has been estimated to about 99% from the level in the beginning of the 1980s. However, it's a bit unclear how many eels are returning back to the Sargasso Sea. And that is an important aspect, because we would like to know whether the protective measures have been effective or not. Since the year 2000, the International Council of Exploration of the Sea, ICES, have recommended that eel fishing should be reduced to or kept as close to zero as possible. And both the UN Organization for Inland Fisheries, IFAC, and ICES tried to get European Commission involved in the eel management, and to develop a management plan in order to make the eel population to recover. And this management plan was decided in 2007, and it was suggested that all member states should develop their own eel management plan. All member states that conducted eel fishing. And the goal was set to reduce the cause of mortality, so that at least 40% of the original biomass of silver eel is likely to reach the sea. This is a bit strange. I would say we will return to this objective because it's difficult to decide and rebuild, of course, the biomass in all areas of Europe to such an extent, and it's a production estimate objective as well, instead of protecting what is left of the eel population. So the Swedish eel management plan was operationalized in 2008, and it had several objectives. One was to clearly stop eel fishing north of Öresund on the Swedish west coast. The Baltic eel fishing was reserved. It was not banned, but it continued, but only for those people who already had an eel fishing record, and no more licenses should be issued as long as the eel stock showed no sign of recovery. This part of the eel plan has now been challenged by the Swedish government, who wonder if not license could be issued after all again to the eel fishers, because they are becoming so old. Also, eel stockings were initially promoted. Eel stockings, that is translocation of imported wild glass eels, originally mostly from Britain, but now since Brexit from France, and often stocked above the hydropower stations. This, at least for the governmental part, has been temporarily stopped since 2020. There were also mitigation measures such as trap and transport of silver eels downstreams, from rivers with hydropower stations, and also increased control of the fishing rules. It should also be mentioned that in 2021, the ICES recommendation to the EU Commission became even sharper. It is now advised that when the precautionary approach is applied, there should be 0 catches in all habitats in 2025. This is the last advice. This applies to both recreational and commercial catches, and include catches of glass eels for restocking and aquaculture. The Swedish government is violating ICES recommendations by allowing continued eel fishing, and also opposing a proposal from Brussels that, for instance, the eel fishing should be banned in the Baltic Sea. How successful has the eel management plan been then? And this is from the article that I published last year. There is several trawl surveys conducted in Northern European waters. The purpose for them is to provide independent information on demersal fish stocks, such as cod and haddock, for instance. And they are bycatching to some extent also eel, but it has not been, what I know at least, of previously used for assessing eel abundance. And this is a study area from the English Channel to the Baltic Sea. The first trawl survey is shown here. It's conducted twice a year, first and fourth quarter of the year. And the blue dots is all trawl hauls and over the years, and the red dots are with eel catches. And as you can see, more eels are caught in Q4 than in Q1, because in Q1 it's very cold, and the eel is not moving that much. IBTS is another one, similar, with Q1 and Q3, with blue and red dots. Similar fishery-independent surveys in the North Sea. And all of them I have used for this study. This is the result in the panel in the upper left is showing eel landings from the Swedish eel landings from the Baltic. Otherwise, it's the different surveys. They show clearly negative trends over time. A matter of fact, sharp decreases in eel quantity, and this decline has been accentuated since 2010. GAM modeling showed the results here, which include the longitude, depth, and year. All of them show significant impact. But even if the effects of longitude and depth is taken away, so to speak. The year effect is clearly there, and there is a decline in catch per unit effort of eels in the trawl surveys. So that is not that encouraging, of course. We can look at the effects of the Swedish Eel Management Plan. Landings has been used as an indicator of how it works, how the plan works in the Baltic. There is a decline in catches, and it has been proposed by or suggested by the Swedish Agency of Marine and Water Management, but the decline in the amount of silver eels is an indication that the plan is working. I would say that is questionable. It could also be due to the general decline in the amount of silver eels in the Baltic, as I just showed you from the Baltic in the BIT survey. On the other hand, the development of the local eel population on the Swedish west coast is interesting because here the fishing was banned totally. I did a study in the 90s on the yellow eel stock on the Swedish west coast, and it was a very clear effect of fishing at that time on the eel stock. This is the length distribution from 4 different localities on the west coast, and all of them show sharp declines since after the eel has been fully recruited to the fishing gear. This is measurements from the eel fishery, from their use of pike nets on the Swedish west coast, and the catches show clearly that the number of eels declined as they grow bigger and older. However, since the ban has been introduced, there is an increase in eel abundance of larger eels on the inshore on the Swedish west coast, which is clearly connected to the ban on eel fishing. So even if the recruitment hasn't increased, there is a significant production of eels from the west coast. It has been estimated, I think, to 300 tons that are escaping back to the Sargasso Sea, which is good. On the other hand, the situation in the Baltic Sea is not that clear. Here, based on marker capture experiments, the Swedish University SLU has suggested that the annual yield is around only 0.3% of the stock. And since there is an not neglectable amount of eel caught every year in the fishery, there is, of course, with that low figure, it turns out to be quite a lot of silver eels in the Baltic. The figure varies between over 20,000 tons to about 4,000 tons. However, the facts speak against such a conclusion. Recruitment is very low. Production of silver eel has probably decreased. The tagging method depends on the willingness of the fishermen, fishers to report recaptures. The fishery-independent trawl survey in this study indicated a sharp decline in the production of large eels. Given what we actually know and the simplest explanation, Occam-Razor argument, the mark recapture method seems to be very flawed, I would say. There is other aspects of the Swedish eel management, since it has been discussed. Farmers had a remit on a mission to evaluate the Swedish Eel Management Plan. And they had an international working group that was evaluating the effectiveness of the plan. And according to this group, in order of priority, they suggested that the loss of connectivity in inland waters due to damming and hydro power stations has disconnected the migration route for eels. Illegal fishing, eel fishing in inland waters, coastal, and first on the fourth place, coastal fishing in the Baltic Sea. And this is not obvious, but that is a correct assessment. Because at the same time, the International Evaluation Group considered the best part of the Swedish environmental plan was the ban on yellow eel fishing on the Swedish west coast. And that is a bit contradictory. I think that the eel management plan was poorly designed from the start. The most important thing is not to achieve a certain level of production in all previous eel habitats. This is an utopic goal, but to take care of all existing naturally recruited eels in Swedish water. And coastal waters were not recognized as important growth habitats for yellow eel, let alone the most important ones. And so the question is, where and when are eel using different habitats? This is the traditional way of looking at eel choice of habitat. And it's salt water or brackish water or fresh water. I think Swedish statistics on eel fishing is informative. There have been, since Sweden's statistics has detailed information on sea fisheries since 1914, while for inland fisheries has been varying, unfortunately. You can notice that the highest level of catches were taken in the beginning of the 50s. It was still high in the 60s, and back in time, the purple bars here are reflecting just marine fisheries, while the orange is inland waters. And there is a paucity in information here due to budget savings for a pretty long time. But nevertheless, even when the hydropower stations were not that developed back in time, still the sea fishery was the most important regarding eel catches. There is an information over 4 years concerning eel catches by country, and most inland fisheries on eel were located to the southern part of Sweden. I had done a short research on the development of hydroelectric power stations in Sweden. It's not that easy to get information on this important industry. It was starting at the beginning of the 20th century, very fast development. And already in the 1910s, it started to impair migration of eels quite significantly. And the early expansion of hydropower in southern Sweden contrasts with the expansion of saltwater eel fishing several decades later. And also the distribution of hydroelectric power station in the 1930s were mostly located to the southern part of Sweden, whereas the bigger rivers in the northern part of Sweden were not that exploited at that time. Also, studies on otoliths, eels, ear bones show that most eels that are caught at sea, both on the west and east coast, have never visited inland waters. As a matter of fact, it can be evaluated by looking at the amount of strontium in the otoliths. The otoliths are inert. They are just growing through the whole lifetime of the fish, and is storing different elements in proportion to its to the occurrence in either in the feed or in the surrounding water. One study showed that chemical analysis of otoliths from silver eels, most of them showed no freshwater presence at all. Similar, a chemical analysis of otoliths from the Swedish west coast, yellow eels, in marine waters. Only one of them had migrated to freshwater. So they are not obligated to enter freshwater. Probably eels, so to speak, consider Swedish waters, Swedish coastal waters as fresh waters because of a low salinity. Another aspect is eel stockings, releases of eels. About 40% of them have been made above the hydroelectric power plants. So turbine depth, that has been a very hot aspect of eel management, is self-inflicted, as a matter of fact. Originally, such stockings were made as a compensation to the fishers of eel, and not for the sake of the eel, of course. And it can also be questioned whether the translocated eel from France really find their way out of the Swedish inland waters. And how do eels find their way back to the Sargasso Sea if they are translocated? There are scientists such as the reef that suggest that eels have a magnetic memory from their drift across the ocean, and they retrace the journey as larvae. At least that is a theory. What can be done instead, apart from banning all eel fishing? The National Plan for Environmental Adaptation of Hydropower has been partly paused. It has a disadvantage, of course, for eels, after all. Remove as many migration barriers as possible, or build fishways that could contribute to a real recovery of biodiversity in rivers. Conclusions. The fishery-independent international trawl surveys show a sharp decline in the abundance of larger eels in the northern European waters in recent decades. The European eel is more threatened today than it was when the Eel Management Plan was introduced. So, in that sense, it has failed. It has not failed on the Swedish west coast. It has not failed, I assume, in Ireland or in Norway, where all fishing has been banned. The failure is due to, I think, reluctance and resistance from the member states to implement effective measures. For instance, Sweden banned a yellow eel fishery, and it seems to work well, but not in the Baltic Sea. More conclusions. Stockings of elvers or glass eels must be banned as well. We must follow the ICES recommendations. Coastal waters are probably and always have been the most important eel habitat, at least for Swedish waters. National management helps to mitigate the negative effects of fishing and other human activities instead of achieving the conservation goal. And that's all. There is a policy memo from the Baltic Sea Centre. We have several of them. And this is the article that I have been extracting information from. Thank you very much.